Banff National Park is a place where majestic peaks and rushing rivers beckon adventurers, but carry deadly dangers. In this video, you'll learn 3 tragic stories: how an avalanche on Monarch Peak swallowed experienced climbers, how a swift North Saskatchewan torrent swept away a photographer looking for the perfect shot, and how world-class mountaineering stars disappeared on the slopes of Howse Peak. Kira Sanders, Leon Garcia, and Thomas Chan were known in the climbing community for their impressive experience and many high-profile climbs. Kira's name often appeared in reports of extreme ice routes, as she specialized in technical ice climbing and held the title of avalanche safety instructor. Liam was originally from Argentina and had a passion for high-altitude climbing in the Andes, where he climbed the 6,000ers on several occasions. Thomas, who grew up in Vancouver, was famous for his summit photos, which were published in leading mountaineering publications. He skillfully combined his passion for climbing with his talent for shooting in extreme conditions. The friendship of this trio was born a few years ago during a joint expedition to Patagonia. It was then that they first realized that they were working as a team. Kira was responsible for analyzing snow conditions and establishing a safe route. Leon led the group on difficult rocky sections, and Thomas provided navigation and captured highlights on camera. From then on, they planned periodic meetings and hikes to keep the team spirit alive. Their next goal was to complete a challenging combination route on one of the peaks in Banff National Park, which is known for its unpredictable weather and varied terrain. The mountains of Banff National Park have attracted climbers from all over the world. For experienced climbers, there are some interesting ice and rock routes there, often requiring a combination of skills in rock climbing, ice climbing, and the ability to navigate potential avalanche danger. Kira, Leon, and Thomas chose the massif known as Monarch Peak, whose steep northeast buttresses have become notorious for being unruly due to the treacherous climate. Temperatures were still low in March, but during the day the sun sometimes heated the surfaces intensely, forming unstable layers of snow. Their plan was to approach the base on March 14th, spend one day scouting and setting up an intermediate camp, and start climbing on the 15th. Leon took over coordination with the local rescue service. He submitted a detailed itinerary and indicated when they intended to return, tentatively by March 18th. Kira referred to the current avalanche forecasts and noted that the risk was assessed as moderate, but with a note of possible warming in the second half of the week. Meanwhile, Thomas checked his gear and charged spare batteries for the cameras, as he was going to film the whole climb. All 3 of them were serious and took every variable into account. On the morning of March 15th, when the team started climbing, the weather was clear but cold. The wind at the top of the gorge was picking up, and at times low snow clouds would fall on the climbers. By about lunchtime, the friends had passed 2 key sections on the cliffs, fixed a few insurance stations, and reached the ice slope higher up the vertical. Kira checked the snow density, Leon led the approach, hammering ice drills, and Thomas kept an eye on the group's overall rhythm. He stopped occasionally to capture short videos on his GoPro. They show the sharp peaks of the mountains surrounding the route and the sun blinding his eyes as it reflected off the ice walls. In the evening of the same day, the team secured a small shelf where they were able to set up 2 single tents. Visibility was reduced at times by the oncoming snow charges, but overall the environment remained tolerable. Kira felt a slight unease. It seemed to her that the snow layers at higher elevations could become unstable if the weather really started to change. However, their schedule didn't allow for much delay. They expected to cross the most dangerous ice section the next day to reach a safe ridge where avalanche risk is usually lower. On March the 16th, the weather remained relatively calm, although the wind near the peaks was picking up. At one of the rest stops, Kira sent a short satellite signal to her acquaintances. "We are on track, approaching the ridge. All is well." In the afternoon, the group traversed the central icefall, where cracked ice sometimes hung over the climbers' heads in the shape of ice mushrooms. Leon skillfully chose his path to minimize the risk of being hit by falling blocks. Thomas took several photos of these eerie ice formations, seeming to anticipate their beauty and danger at the same time. By late afternoon, they had reached the point they planned to use as an intermediate camp. From this point, there were still a few hours of technical climbing to the summit, but a relatively easy exit to the ridge was to follow. However, the weather information suddenly deteriorated. The forecast showed a cyclone approaching, which could bring snow charges and a sharp change in temperature. The team decided to spend the night here and get up early on March the 17th to try to get to the safe zone of the ridge quickly. On the morning of March the 17th, communication with the team was cut off. Banff Park staff, as well as local rescue volunteers, noted increased winds and fresh snowfall. Temperatures suddenly rose several degrees, which could have weakened the top layers of old snow and caused dangerous snow planks to form on windward slopes. In the middle of the afternoon, one of the rangers patrolling a neighboring gorge heard a high-pitched rumble typical of a large avalanche. It later became clear that the snow flow had come down the side of Monarch Peak and had swept across part of the route Kira, Leon, and Thomas were on. This event took many by surprise. Meteorologists had warned of possible overloaded snow layers, but no one could give an accurate prediction of when the avalanche would occur. In the Banff mountain system, even a small shift in temperature, an increase in wind, or an additional load on the slope, such as a group of climbers, can trigger a tragic outcome. When the trio failed to make contact at the agreed-upon time, volunteers from the climbers' acquaintances and park staff raised the alarm. On the evening of March 17, the first search and rescue team arrived at the foot of Monarch Peak. However, darkness and squally wind virtually ruled out the possibility of an immediate ascent to the place of a possible descent. In the morning of March the 18th, the team was supported by rescuers with a helicopter who tried to conduct an overflight. As they approached the massif, they saw a huge break line in the ice and slope, about 200 to 300 meters across the mountain from where the snow mass had blown off. In the valley where the snow flow had flowed down, a vast area of rubble made of compacted snow, ice, and rocks was seen. In places, the depth of this debris exceeded several meters. The pilot did not dare to fly closer to the wall due to wind gusts and foggy haze caused by suspended snow particles. Moreover, the threat of repeated avalanches persisted, so landing people on the slope seemed too risky. By March 19th, rescuers were able to reach the lower part of the avalanche plume and begin the probing procedure with long feelers. Dogs trained to search by scent were brought by helicopter just down the slope where they could work. However, strong winds, fresh precipitation, and huge volumes of snow made the task very difficult. During the search, they found several fragments of climbing equipment, a fragment of a tent frame, a piece of blue-colored rope, and a metal clasp resembling a carabiner. It was difficult to determine exactly whether these items belonged to the missing group. In theory, climbers have a chance to survive an avalanche if they are not badly traumatized and if they are lucky enough to be in some kind of air pocket. But statistically speaking, after 15 to 30 minutes, the chances drop precipitously without emergency assistance. Moreover, we were talking about a massive avalanche with large fragments of ice and rocks that could cause fatal injuries on impact. Added to this was the fact that several days had already passed since the avalanche was supposed to have occurred, and the frosty nights were only complicating the situation. Relatives and friends of the climbers traveled to Banff, trying to keep up with news of the search. Among those who arrived was Kira's younger sister, who cried as she sat in the car by the side of the road, not daring to look at the mountains where her sister was missing. Leon's wife, who had traveled from Argentina, held firm, but her eyes showed confusion. She recalled Leon saying that, "There is nothing more beautiful than to go to the top and see the world beneath you." Thomas's family brought a few photos of him from the mountains, hoping that their search efforts would be some sort of tribute to his passion for the scenery. Rescuers continued overflights and ground searches, but a new wave of rainfall forced operations to be suspended again and again. Strict safety requirements did not allow people to stay long in the danger zone. New cracks began to appear on some parts of the slopes, indicating that the snow was not yet stable. Every step along the avalanche plume was fraught with the possibility of failure or an additional portion of snow from above. On the third day of the search, the Banff Park Rescue Coordinator announced that the active phase of the search was significantly hampered by conditions on the slope. Although several volunteer and professional mountaineering groups offered to continue at the risk of death, management decided to suspend the massive search. Authorities issued the following statement: "It is with deep regret that we report that Kira Sanders, Leon Garcia, and Thomas Chan have been reported missing following a large avalanche on the northeast slope of Monarch Peak. Given the volume and strength of the avalanche, as well as the time that has passed, the likelihood of finding them alive is, alas, extremely slim." This news shocked the mountaineering community. Social networks and specialized forums were filled with words of support for the families. People recalled how Kira taught avalanche safety to young hikers, how Leon inspired newcomers to train, and Thomas made videos about the importance of reading weather reports. All told, the three were not reckless adventurers. Instead, they were renowned for their responsible and thorough approach to each expedition. A week after the tragedy, the remaining parts of the search took a narrower format. Individual instructors and rescuers tried to go around the foot of the ice couloirs, hoping to spot any pieces of equipment on the surface. However, fresh snowfalls and winds-moving snow masses reduced the chances to zero. By the end of March, the weather forecast indicated a warming trend that could trigger more avalanches. As a result, officials decided to permanently shut down operations, believing that the search for bodies in these conditions carried an unacceptable risk to the living. Another case occurred in July 2023, a tragedy that shocked the local community and still causes controversy among tourists and nature lovers. A 29-year-old Calgary resident disappeared without a trace after being caught in the turbulent currents of one of the park's mountain rivers. The case was a stark reminder of how treacherous nature can be, even in places seemingly safe and familiar. According to available records, Gagandeep Singh Khalsa, along with two companions, traveled to Banff to enjoy the beauty of the Canadian Rocky Mountains and capture it in photographs. Their destination was the popular Glacier Lake Trail, known for its spectacular views of glacial lakes and majestic peaks. Hiking in Canada's national parks was commonplace for this group, and they considered themselves fairly experienced hikers. The friends reached a scenic point near a bridge over the North Saskatchewan River, a place that attracts hikers because of its combination of turquoise waters, coniferous forests, and rugged mountain ranges. It was here that the group decided to take a break to photograph the scenery. However, the beauty of the river hid danger. Fed by melting glaciers, it was icy and incredibly swift, which is not always obvious at first sight. According to rescue services and witness accounts, that evening the group went to the very edge of the bank to take pictures at the water's edge. Khalsa probably stumbled on a slippery rock or got too close to the cliff, lost his balance and fell into the river. One of the friends was able to see the moment of the fall, but the current instantly carried the man away. In a matter of moments, he disappeared from sight, hidden by the bubbling foam and turns of the river. Locals note that such incidents in the mountains are not uncommon. Mountain rivers, seemingly calm at first glance, carry a deadly threat. Icy water, powerful currents, and sharp underwater rocks make them extremely dangerous. A person caught in such a stream rarely has a chance of rescue. Eyewitnesses tried to help. Someone threw ropes, others called for help, but the current was stronger. News of the incident quickly reached the park rangers, and within an hour the first rescue team was on the scene. They began searching the banks in hopes of finding even the slightest clue, clothes, shoes, or a backpack. However, the search yielded no results. The next day the operation became large-scale. Helicopters, drones, and cinematologists with dogs were involved in the search. Rescuers examined not only the banks, but also hard-to-reach areas of the canyon where the river goes. The water temperature of only 4 degrees Celsius made the chances of survival minimal. Without special equipment, hypothermia sets in within minutes. The canyon, with its narrow passages and deep cliffs, only made the task more difficult. The Royal Canadian Mounted Police and the Park Administration organized an operational headquarters at the beginning of the Glacier Lake Trail. This is where information from volunteers, locals, and hikers who might have noticed anything suspicious flowed in. Helicopters circled the surrounding area, including rocky areas, but no sign of Khalsa could be found. The incident deeply affected Calgary's Sikh community, to which the missing man belonged. Gagandeep was known as an active participant in volunteer initiatives and organizer of cultural events. His disappearance came as a heavy blow to friends and acquaintances. People gathered daily at a local gurdwara to pray for his rescue, and the community began fundraising to finance additional searches. Gagandeep was the soul of the company, a man with a big heart, one friend recalled. He adored nature, but was always cautious. It's hard to believe he just disappeared. Despite all efforts, no backpack, clothes, or other traces could be found. This raised more and more questions. How could a man disappear so quickly and without a trace? As the days wore on, the rescuers increasingly concluded that the current could have carried Khalsa far downriver, perhaps into inaccessible underground crevices where water passes through limestone rocks. Even if the body remained submerged, finding it at this level of current and depth is virtually impossible. Relatives who remained in touch with the police clung to any hope, but it was fading with each passing day. After a week, the active phase of the search was officially suspended. The rescue service said in a statement that all available areas had been surveyed and that without new leads it was impractical to continue the operation. However, police emphasized that the case remains open and any new information could restart the search. For Khalsa's family and friends, it was a difficult moment. Hope for a miracle was melting away, giving way to a bitter reality. The case has become a topic of discussion, not only in Canada, but beyond. Some mystery lovers point out the oddities. How could the man disappear so quickly? Why were there no traces left behind? However, experts explain everything rationally. Icy water, strong currents, and the complex topography of the river did their job. Northern Saskatchewan, despite its beauty, remains a death trap. Gagandeep's family continued to visit the site of the tragedy, consulting experts and praying for a miracle. One of the relatives in an interview with local media said, "We want to believe that he is out there somewhere, perhaps injured or losing his memory, but deep down we realize there's almost no chance." The Calgary community rallied around the family, but even their support couldn't soften the pain of the loss. Another fatal story happened to three famous climbers. David Lama, Hans-Jörg Auer, and Jess Ross Kelly went missing in the spring of 2019 while climbing Howes Peak, located in Banff National Park. These athletes were among the leading figures in world mountaineering, with Lama and Auer representing Austria, and Ross Kelly was from the United States. They were united by their interest in challenging routes that combined technically difficult sections and high risk. David Lama became widely known as a talented climber in his teens, and then made a number of first ascents on extreme walls in South America. Hans-Jörg Auer became famous for solo ascents in the Dolomites without insurance, earning him a reputation as one of the most daring climbers of our time. Jess Ross Kelly continued the family tradition. His father, John Ross Kelly, repeatedly went to the Himalayas and conquered the 8,000ers. Jess himself specialized in ice and combined routes, increasingly going beyond classic mountaineering. In the spring of 2019, they opted for Hawes Peak, a peak of about 3,295 meters that is rarely visited by tourists. The mountaineering community is well aware that this massif is characterized by serious avalanche danger, especially during transitional periods of the season, when the afternoon sun can melt the upper layers of snow and disrupt the stability of the snowboard. After arriving in Banff National Park, the three climbers checked forecasts, checked avalanche bulletins, and advanced to the east slope of Hawes Peak tentatively on April 15th. Information about the progress of the ascent is largely unavailable, as the area is sparsely visited, and they did not publicize exact plans for the final stage. Usually at least one of the participants got in touch with their relatives, but this time the connection was cut off on April 16th or 17th. When it became clear that Lama, Auer, and Ross Kelly were not making contact and had not returned by the deadline, Parks Canada staff conducted an aerial reconnaissance and found large avalanche tracks on the east side of Hawes Peak. The powerful snow mass, judging from the wide breakaway line, had broken off and traveled down a couloir that was estimated to coincide with the climber's likely path of travel. Rescuers tried to approach, but the following days were unfavorable. Wind and fresh precipitation made it difficult to make safe forays onto the slope, and the risk of repeated avalanches remained high. Nevertheless, fragments of equipment were found on site that indicated the team's presence in the area. It became apparent that they were trapped under the snow mass. Parks Canada officials said there was very little chance that any of the missing survived, as the chances of rescue in such a large-scale slide dropped precipitously in the first few hours. Jess's father, John Ross Kelly, said in an interview that his son had always taken safety precautions and traveled carefully. But there are situations in the mountains where no amount of preparation can guarantee a safe outcome. Further search efforts were conducted using helicopters, canine teams, and avalanche sensors. But each day, bad weather forced rescuers to suspend operations. When conditions briefly improved, the bodies of the climbers were found. They were identified thanks to personal belongings and features of the equipment. So the tragedy was officially confirmed, and the world of mountaineering lost 3 leading athletes at once. In Austria, memorial meetings were held in honor of David Lama and Hans-Jörg Auer, where many celebrated their extraordinary contribution to the development of technical mountaineering and first ascents around the world. In the United States, a memorial ceremony was held for Jess Roskelley, attended by friends and family members, including his father, who repeatedly mentioned his son's penchant for responsibility and teamwork. The incident sparked widespread public outcry and prompted another discussion of mountain safety, particularly in the context of avalanche danger. Canada's mountain services and rescuers have once again emphasized that even seasoned professionals are at risk when spring instability is severe. The tragedy at Hawes Peak was an example of how short the interval between successfully navigating dangerous terrain and a fatal avalanche can be. Today, the names of David Lama, Hans-Jörg Auer, and Jess Roskelley remain in mountaineering history as an example of dedication to the mountains and the pursuit of new horizons. And what happened in spring 2019 in Banff National Park is a reminder that even the most talented and trained climbers are not immune to the unpredictable forces of nature. That's all for now. If these stories resonated with you, put a like and share the video with your friends. Subscribe to learn more about the mysteries of wildlife. Write in the comments, are you ready to challenge such peaks? Take care and see you again.